I'm Lena Crawford, and I still remember the sound of laughter cutting through the air as water splashed across my face. Cold, humiliating, unforgettable. 4 years ago, during what should have been the proudest night of my life, my first fashion show, my family turned that moment into a public execution of my dreams. They stormed in, shouting, accusing, throwing water as if they could wash away everything I had built. And for a moment, they almost did. But pain has a strange way of shaping people. That night didn't destroy me, it defined me. 4 years later, I stood in front of the same people who once called me worthless, only this time they were the ones asking for mercy. This is the story of how I rebuilt myself from their rejection, how I turned cruelty into creation. I grew up in Savannah, Georgia, in a white-columned house that looked like it belonged on a postcard. My mother, Caroline, was an attorney, sharp, immaculate, obsessed with appearances. My father, Thomas Crawford, ran a prestigious local firm, and my older sister, Amelia, followed neatly in their footsteps. To outsiders, we were the perfect Southern family, educated, successful, tightly knit. Inside, it was a battlefield disguised as civility. From as early as I could remember, I didn't fit the Crawford mold. While Amelia practiced her debate speeches, I hid in my room sketching gowns on the back of old legal documents. Fabric swatches replaced textbooks on my desk. When I tried to show my designs, Caroline's lips thinned into disapproval. "Drawing dresses won't feed you," she'd say, her voice clipped. "Courtrooms do." My father rarely spoke, but his silence carried weight, disappointment heavy enough to crush a child's dreams. Amelia, 3 years older and effortlessly perfect, loved to twist the knife. "Lena, you're just playing dress-up," she'd sneer. "Real women have ambition." But I did have ambition. It just didn't fit their narrow definition of success. My only safe place was my grandmother June's little cottage by the marsh. Her hands were always busy with thread and needle, her living room filled with the hum of an old Singer sewing machine. Unlike my parents, she saw my obsession as a gift. When she caught me tracing dress outlines in her kitchen one afternoon, she smiled instead of scolding. "Let them chase their suits and speeches," she said, guiding my hands across a spool of silk. "You were born to create beauty, not arguments." Under her guidance, I learned how to turn scraps of fabric into dreams, how to translate emotion into shape and texture. She told me stories about the dresses she made during her youth, gowns for debutantes, brides, and women who wanted to feel like themselves for once. Her faith in me became the thread holding me together. By 17, my secret sketches had turned into full-blown designs. I spent nights cutting patterns by flashlight and saving babysitting money for fabric. When I told my parents I wanted to apply to the Parsons School of Design in New York, the reaction was nuclear. Caroline's voice rose like thunder. "Parsons, that's not a real education, Lena. You're throwing your life away." Amelia's laughter followed, cold, sharp, and familiar. "You think you'll be the next Coco Chanel? Please, you'll come crawling back in a year." Thomas didn't yell, but his words were worse. "If you choose this nonsense, you're on your own." I remember standing there, my acceptance email still open on my phone, realizing what on your own truly meant. I left their house that night. Grandma June packed me a bag, pressed her old sewing kit into my hands, and whispered, "Go, sew your way into the world, child." New York was everything Savannah wasn't: loud, chaotic, alive. I arrived with 2 suitcases, a second-hand sewing machine, and $300. Parsons was both heaven and hell, endless inspiration but crushing competition. To afford tuition, I waited tables in the East Village and worked part-time in a thrift boutique in Soho. I learned to hem dresses for rich women who barely looked at me, but I studied every garment that came through the door. The stitching, the drape, the fabric, all lessons they didn't teach in class. At school, Professor Aria Lynn, a no-nonsense designer with an eye for innovation, took notice of me. "You don't design with your head," she said once, flipping through my sketches. "You design with your wounds. That's rare. Don't lose it." Those words carried me through nights when exhaustion felt unbearable. While my classmates came from money and privilege, I came from rejection, and hunger makes for fierce art. Halfway through my second year, I got a call that split me open. Grandma June had passed away quietly in her sleep. I flew back to Savannah with trembling hands and a heart that refused to believe it. At her funeral, my parents kept their distance. Caroline looked through me like I was a stranger. When the will was read, June had left me her cottage and her sewing machine. "She always spoiled you," Amelia muttered afterward. But I didn't care. That house, that machine, they were symbols of love in a world that had given me none. When I returned to New York, grief bled into my designs. I created a line inspired by her: muted colors, flowing silhouettes, delicate embroidery. It was my way of saying goodbye. Professor Lin saw the sketches and insisted I submit them to a student showcase. That show changed everything. A boutique buyer approached me afterward, offering to feature 2 of my pieces in their spring collection. It wasn't fame, but it was validation, the first spark of a fire that would never go out. After graduation, I joined Rothman Atelier, a high-end design house in Manhattan. The pace was brutal, but I thrived under pressure. I learned to balance creativity with business, watching how fashion wasn't just art, it was survival. My boss, Patricia Rothman, was intimidating, silver-haired, sharp-tongued, but brilliant. She didn't coddle. "Emotion means nothing if you can't deliver on time," she said once, tossing my sketchbook onto the table. "Now make it work." I did. In 2 years, I went from intern to junior designer, leading small capsule projects and learning the art of presentation. But as my career grew, so did my family's bitterness. Occasional emails trickled in, Amelia bragging about her courtroom victories, Caroline checking in with veiled condescension. When an article mentioned my name in Harper's Weekly style, Caroline wrote, "I hope you're finally done with this little hobby." I didn't reply. By then, I'd learned silence was the loudest answer. At 25, I was selected to present my first independent collection, a small show under the Rothman label during New York Fashion Week. It was everything I'd dreamed of. Models rehearsed under bright lights. Music thumped through the air. Each gown told a story, rebellion stitched in silk. As I stood backstage, heart racing, I saw familiar faces slip into the audience. Caroline, Thomas, Amelia, I hadn't invited them. My stomach twisted. The show began. Applause rippled through the crowd as the final model walked. I stepped out for my bow, proud, trembling, free. Then it happened. Caroline stood up, voice sharp as glass. "You're a disgrace to this family, Lena," she shouted. Water splashed across my face, cold, shocking. Thomas joined in, furious, his words venomous. "We wasted everything on you." Cameras flashed. Gasps echoed. My humiliation went viral before the night was over. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I turned, walked off the stage, and swore to myself that I would never let them break me again. That was the last time I ever spoke to them. The fallout was brutal. Tabloid headlines, gossip blogs, whispers of family drama. But behind the noise, my collection received rave reviews. Critics called it raw and fearless, unaware the chaos had only fueled the narrative. Patricia pulled me aside a week later. "They wanted to bury you," she said. "Instead, they gave you a headline, now rise from it." And I did. Within 2 years, I launched my own label, Crawford Atelier, a name I claimed not from pride but from defiance. With my friend and co-designer Nadia Perez, I built a brand rooted in strength, architectural cuts, bold lines, and the quiet confidence of survival. Our first collection sold out within weeks. By year 3, we had celebrity clients, magazine covers, and an invitation to Paris Fashion Week. I bought a house on the coast, not in Savannah, but close enough to feel the salt breeze of home. It wasn't revenge that drove me anymore. It was freedom. 4 years after the water incident, I was in my studio overlooking the ocean when the intercom buzzed. 3 voices I never thought I'd hear again stood at my gate: Caroline, Thomas, and Amelia. They looked smaller somehow, their perfect posture replaced with exhaustion. Caroline spoke first, her tone hesitant. "Lena, we need your help." I said nothing, waiting. Thomas's voice cracked. "The firm went under, bad investments, we've lost everything." They explained how Amelia's career collapsed after a scandal, how their house was foreclosed, how debt had swallowed their reputation whole. Finally, Caroline whispered, "We were hoping you could lend us something, just until we get back on our feet." I stared at them, the same people who drenched me in shame, who called my dream worthless. "You don't get to rewrite history," I said softly. "I built this life without you. You taught me what rejection feels like, and I turned it into purpose. I owe you nothing." For once, they had no words. They left the same way they'd arrived, hollow, defeated. I closed the gate and felt no triumph, just peace. It was over. Nadia found me later, standing by the window. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I think this is the first time I actually am." The sea wind carried through the glass, warm and endless. I thought of Grandma June, her hands, her sewing machine, her voice telling me to create beauty from pain. I smiled, turned back to my sketches, and kept drawing. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be.